The red wax seal on the lower stairwell door was fractured along one edge. Not broken, disturbed. The guard assigned to the east corridor paused mid-step, noting the hairline shift in the insignia pressed into the wax. The door had been sealed after an electrical fault 2 days earlier. No entry authorized, no maintenance scheduled. Yet security had just flagged movement from inside that sealed space. He did not knock. He listened. The control room did not raise its voice when it called his name. It never did. The alert appeared as a quiet notation on the internal channel. Motion detection, sealed stairwell, north service quadrant. The Royal Guard assigned to interior watch shifted his attention to the secondary monitor mounted beside the marble column. The palace at night had a different sound profile. Air moved through the vents with a low mechanical breath. The chandeliers had been dimmed to half power, casting restrained pools of amber light across polished stone. Footsteps carried farther after formal hours. He studied the timestamp. The stairwell in question had been sealed 3 months earlier after renovation work concluded. The wax insignia on its access plate bore the royal crest, impressed under supervision and recorded in the maintenance ledger. No one entered without written authorization countersigned by command. He acknowledged the alert and requested live feed magnification. The corridor camera showed nothing at first, only a narrow service passage with framed portraits and a red carpet runner aligned precisely down the center. Then, faintly, the metal handle of the stairwell door shifted. Not opened, not fully pressed, just tension against the latch, enough to register movement. The guard felt the temperature difference immediately. Service corridors held a cooler draft. He left his post to verify physically, boots striking stone in steady rhythm. His gloves remained on. When he reached the door, the wax seal was intact at first glance, crest unbroken, but the lower edge of the strip showed a hairline lift as if adhesive had been eased and pressed back into place. He leaned closer. The wax bore a fine fracture not visible on camera. Someone had tested it. He notified control and requested internal access logs for the quadrant. No maintenance crew was scheduled, no badge entry registered within the past 6 hours. Protocol required him to hold position and wait for a senior interior officer before breaching a sealed threshold. He stood still, listening. The palace had its own acoustic language, distant elevator cables, a guard's cough 2 wings away, the faint tick of climate systems adjusting humidity for artwork. Beneath those, a second motion alert triggered, longer, sustained, not a brush against metal, weight shifting. The guard's posture adjusted, shoulders squared but relaxed. He placed one hand lightly against the door. There was resistance from within, subtle and immediate, then stillness again. He withdrew his hand without forcing entry. His training advised patience. Escalation without confirmation could create unnecessary alarm, particularly with private family quarters directly above the stairwell's upper landing. He requested once more that logs be verified for contractor access, even though none was scheduled. The response came back unchanged. No authorized presence. The silence on the other side of the door felt deliberate now, not empty. He remained positioned in front of the seal, aware that the decision to wait would transfer responsibility upward, and the decision to act would settle entirely on him. The motion sensor triggered again, this time unmistakably sustained for several seconds. He exhaled once, slow and measured, and keyed his communicator to request immediate supervisory clearance, knowing it would not arrive in time. The reply from command was procedural and controlled. Hold position, senior officer en route. Do not breach until clearance confirmed. The guard acknowledged without comment, though the corridor felt narrower with each passing second. The stairwell led upward toward restricted residential corridors, private study rooms, a nursery suite converted years earlier, and the current quarters of the young royal who resided in that wing during academic sessions. The child was scheduled to remain inside until morning under household supervision. The guard calculated distance silently, 3 landings from this door to the secured study corridor. If someone had already gained internal access before resealing the wax, they would not need to exit through the corridor at all. They would move upward. Another motion alert pulsed on the handheld display clipped to his vest. Longer again. He shifted his stance and examined the hinge side. The wax fracture had widened, barely perceptible but altered. Someone inside was managing pressure carefully, trying not to break the seal entirely. That detail disturbed him more than a forced entry would have. Force suggested impulse, caution suggested planning. He contacted control again, requesting confirmation that no junior administrative override had been issued without full chain documentation. The answer was delayed this time. While waiting, he lowered himself slightly to inspect the threshold gap. A faint draft emerged, warmer than corridor air. Human presence changed temperature. He listened closely and detected what might have been fabric brushing concrete. No heavy equipment, no tools striking stone. Whoever was inside was stationary, perhaps aware that motion sensors were active. The senior officer's estimated arrival time updated, 6 minutes. In 6 minutes, someone inside a sealed stairwell connected to a child's residential wing could ascend unnoticed if they reached the internal latch above. The guard weighed consequence against reprimand. Breaking a seal without command authorization required formal justification. Failing to act if a protected minor's proximity was at risk required far more. His communicator vibrated softly with a partial response. No official contractor clearance recorded, but a junior facilities administrator had filed a temporary inspection request earlier in the week, unsigned by final authority. The inspection had been postponed. No follow-up entry existed. The guard did not ask further questions. He adjusted his earpiece, voice level. Control, motion sustained, potential internal compromise. I am initiating visual verification. There was a pause on the channel, measured, reluctant. The response returned, negative, await senior presence. He removed his glove from his right hand and pressed his thumb deliberately into the wax crest. The fracture deepened. The insignia gave way with a mudded crack, sound absorbed by thick corridor carpeting. He opened the door slowly, enough to clear the frame without impact. The stairwell beyond was dim, emergency lights casting pale strips along concrete steps. The air carried the scent of dust and fabric. He did not step inside yet. He listened first. Above him, somewhere beyond the first landing, a weight shifted again, subtle but undeniable. He crossed the threshold, allowing the door to close softly behind him, leaving the corridor and its protocol on the other side. The stairwell absorbed sound in a way the main corridors did not. Concrete replaced marble, and the air carried a dry mineral stillness that held each movement close. The guard paused just inside the doorway, allowing his eyes to adjust fully to the emergency lighting. Narrow strips of white ran along the wall edges, illuminating steps without casting long shadows. He listened first. No hurried retreat, no heavy breathing, only the faint hum of electrical systems and the muted vibration of the building settling into night. He moved upward one step at a time, placing his weight along the outer edge of each tread to reduce echo. The first landing came into view gradually. Nothing obstructed it. No person stood waiting, yet something had changed the air. It felt recently disturbed. He crouched slightly and examined the concrete surface under angled light. A partial footprint marked the dust near the wall, cleaner at the center, where pressure had displaced residue. Not a guard-issued sole. The palace interior unit wore patterned rubber with a distinct crosshatch. This print was smooth along the arch. He did not photograph it yet. Documentation would come after containment. He continued upward. At the second landing, the detail became unmistakable. A folded wool blanket rested against the corner railing, tucked neatly but not stored. It bore no palace inventory tag. Beside it lay an empty water bottle and a small wooden puzzle board, its carved pieces arranged halfway through completion. The crest engraved on one corner identified it as property of the young royal's study collection, an educational set used during afternoon instruction. The guard did not touch it. He observed its position relative to the wall, noting that it had been placed with care rather than dropped in haste. Someone had occupied this landing long enough to rest. The stairwell connected upward to a secured door leading directly into the private academic corridor, an area limited to household staff, tutors, and assigned protection officers. The implication shifted the situation from simple trespass to internal compromise. He keyed his communicator at the lowest audible setting. Unauthorized items located, evidence of sustained presence, possible access to upper residential corridor. Control responded with tightened formality, requesting confirmation that no family member had authorized temporary storage during renovation follow-up. He knew the answer before they finished the sentence. The young royal did not use this stairwell. It had been sealed precisely to eliminate unsupervised movement between service levels and private study areas. The guard advanced another flight. The upper door remained closed, its internal bar in place. He exhaled once, controlled. If entry had not yet occurred above, it was imminent. Behind him, the lower door, seal now broken, he understood that his action would be reviewed in full. He felt neither regret nor certainty, only calculation. He knelt briefly beside the blanket and pressed 2 fingers against the fabric. It was still faintly warm. Warmth meant proximity in time, not hours, but minutes. He rose without hesitation and continued upward, adjusting his pace from investigative to interceptive. The third landing sat just below the secured residential door. A maintenance utility panel was recessed into the wall there, rarely opened except during electrical inspections. Its screws had been loosened, not removed entirely, just eased enough to create a narrow gap. He angled his light briefly and saw the thin line of a portable relay device tucked behind the panel edge, wires feeding upward along the conduit. Someone had attempted to manipulate internal sensor reporting without disabling the system outright. The motion sensor indicator on his handheld stabilized, no longer pulsing irregularly. Whoever had installed it was still within range or had just moved. From above, faint and almost imperceptible, came the sound of a footstep on finished wood, not the hollow tone of concrete, hardwood flooring, the residential corridor. The guard's decision formed without ceremony. He disengaged the internal bar and opened the upper door quietly, allowing only enough clearance for controlled entry. The lighting beyond was softer, warmer, filtered through decorative sconces rather than emergency strips. He stepped through and resealed the door behind him, isolating the stairwell. Down the corridor to his left lay the entrance to the young royal's study wing. To his right, a bend toward family sitting rooms. The air carried the faint scent of polished cedar and paper. He advanced toward the study wing, senses narrowed, aware that he was no longer investigating a breach. He was now inside the protected space where a child slept, and someone unauthorized had just moved within it. The corridor lights were dim to evening settings, casting a restrained amber tone along the paneled walls. The guard slowed his pace, not from hesitation, but to prevent the floorboards from announcing him. The study wing entrance stood 15 meters ahead, its carved doors closed but not locked, Household practice favored accessibility over visible barriers during occupied hours. He listened before approaching. From within came the faint rhythm of pages turning, followed by the soft scrape of a chair leg. Routine sounds, controlled. He shifted his attention instead to the adjoining alcove near the archival cabinets. A shadow withdrew too quickly when he advanced, not dramatic, but deliberate. He altered direction without increasing speed. "Interior unit," Command's voice entered his earpiece quietly. "Containment only. Household to remain undisturbed. Senior administration will address authorization discrepancy." The language was careful. Discrepancy, not intrusion. The guard did not respond immediately. He reached the alcove and found the cabinet door slightly ajar. Inside, maintenance access to secondary wiring intersected with the corridor's sensor grid. The screws here matched the loosened panel below. He closed the cabinet without noise. "Request clarification," he said at last. "Was a contractor authorized within residential boundaries this week?" A pause followed, longer than operational delay required. Another voice entered, administrative, not tactical. It identified a junior palace facilities officer who had approved limited after-hours access for electrical inspection 3 days prior. Documentation incomplete, but entered into the system retroactively. The guard absorbed the implication. Retroactive entry meant the record was written after presence had occurred. Contractor badge not returned to registry, believed misplaced. The guard's gaze fixed on the study wing door. Misplaced badges did not trigger motion sensors from sealed stairwells. They did not install relay devices behind panels. "Contractor remains unverified," he said evenly. Command's response sharpened. "Do not escalate publicly. Secure corridor. Senior review pending." The distinction was clear. Preserve quiet over confrontation. Preserve order over disruption. He felt the familiar weight of hierarchy pressing against instinct. The young royal was within that study room, likely concluding evening reading under a tutor's supervision. If an unauthorized individual had already moved through adjacent alcoves, the threat was proximity, not spectacle. He stepped toward the study wing entrance and placed himself between it and the bend leading to family rooms. His posture remained formal, weapon holstered, presence controlled. A household attendant emerged from a side office carrying a stack of lesson materials. She paused at the sight of him, but did not question his position. Interior guards were expected near juvenile quarters. He inclined his head minimally, signaling routine vigilance. She passed without alarm. The administrative voice returned in his earpiece, firmer now. "Senior directive, contain and document. Do not confront until supervisory presence confirmed." The guard's eyes shifted to the far end of the corridor, where a figure stood partially obscured by shadow near a decorative pillar. Civilian attire, hands visible, watching. The man stepped forward slowly when he realized he had been seen. Mid-30s, neutral expression, posture attempting calm compliance. He wore a visitor identification lanyard clipped at the waist rather than around the neck, an unusual choice inside residential boundaries. The badge itself was visible, but angled away. "Evening," the man said quietly, as though addressing a colleague rather than security. "Electrical review." His tone lacked the hesitancy of someone lost. The guard did not approach immediately. He measured distance, exits, line of sight to the study wing door. "Identification displayed," he instructed. The man complied, lifting the laminate into clearer view. The laminate bore palace insignia and a contractor classification. The date stamp, however, showed issuance 3 days earlier with no clearance extension. Expired. "You were authorized for service quadrant access, not residential corridor." The man's jaw tightened briefly before smoothing again. Administrative approval was granted. Facilities officer signed off. The explanation aligned with Command's partial admission, but did not justify current location. In the guard's earpiece, administrative counsel intervened. "Confirm identity only. Detainment not authorized without breach." The word breach felt narrow.
The breach had already occurred at the sealed stairwell. "Your badge is expired. Return with me to the stairwell access point for verification." The man hesitated. It was a fractional delay, but measurable. His eyes flicked once toward the study wing door, toward the carved wood that separated him from a child's quarters. The guard stepped subtly to block that line of sight. Silence lengthened. The household attendant's footsteps faded deeper into the corridor, unaware. Command repeated its instruction to maintain discretion. The guard understood the unspoken concern, scandal, internal embarrassment, procedural failure, yet he also understood that proximity inside juvenile quarters constituted its own threshold. He extended his hand, not aggressively, but with finality. "This way." For a moment it appeared the man would comply. Then, from within the study room, a chair shifted again, and a young voice murmured something indistinct, soft, unaware of tension outside the door. The contractor's posture changed almost imperceptibly, weight transferring backward as if calculating retreat routes. The guard saw the calculation before movement began. His own stance adjusted in response, closing the remaining distance without raising alarm. Command's voice sharpened in his ear. "Stand down, senior officer arriving." The guard did not stand down. He maintained eye contact with the unauthorized man, aware that the next motion, forward or back, would determine whether this remained administrative irregularity or became an immediate protective intervention. The unauthorized man shifted first, not toward the study wing, but backward toward the bend leading to the stairwell access door. It was a calculated retreat, subtle enough to appear cooperative, but angled toward escape rather than compliance. The guard stepped forward at the same measured pace, closing the corridor space without drawing attention from within the rooms. "Remain where you are," he said quietly. The tone was controlled, neither raised nor negotiable. The man stopped, hands still visible, but his breathing had changed, slightly elevated. The corridor lights reflected faintly along the polished floor, revealing the tension in his shoulders. "There's no need for escalation," the man replied. "Facilities approval was filed." His eyes moved again, involuntarily this time, toward the stairwell direction. The guard noted it. Above them, the residential wing remained undisturbed. No alarms, no visible panic. That was the objective. He touched his earpiece once. "Unauthorized individual located within Juvenile corridor. Badge expired. Escorting for verification." He did not wait for administrative objection. The man took a half step back. That was enough. The guard closed the distance fully, one hand securing the man's wrist with firm precision, the other guiding his shoulder toward the wall without impact. It was executed without spectacle, no sudden force, no raised voice, just controlled redirection. The contractor stiffened but did not resist physically. "You're exceeding authority," he muttered under his breath. The guard did not answer. He pivoted the man smoothly toward the stairwell access door and disengaged the internal latch. The door opened with a muted click. Cool air met warmer corridor air as they crossed the threshold. Once inside, the guard positioned the man against the concrete wall, securing his wrists behind him with standard interior restraints carried for containment scenarios. The stairwell's emergency lighting cast a pale tone over both of them, draining warmth from the scene. "You are not authorized for this level," the guard said evenly. "Your access device was used to manipulate sealed infrastructure." The man shook his head once. "I was told the seal was symbolic, temporary." The explanation lacked conviction. The guard guided him down one flight to the landing where the blanket and puzzle remained. The sight of the wooden crest piece between them shifted the atmosphere. The man's gaze dropped, then moved away. Reinforcement footsteps echoed faintly from below, senior officers finally ascending. The guard maintained physical control, but did not increase pressure. The objective was containment without disturbance to the household above. The unauthorized presence had been intercepted before reaching the study room threshold. That line had not been crossed. Yet the method of access, the altered seal, the relay device, the retroactive documentation suggested coordination beyond a lone contractor's improvisation. The senior officer reached the landing and paused at the sight of the scene. Broken seal below, unsecured relay removed, detained individual compliant but silent. The officer's expression remained professional, though tightened at the edges. "Report," he requested quietly. The guard delivered facts without embellishment: motion detection, fractured seal, relay device, expired badge, proximity to juvenile corridor. No assumptions, no accusations beyond evidence. The senior officer listened without interruption, then looked to the detained man. "Administrative authorization?" he asked. The contractor nodded once, though the gesture carried less certainty now. "Facilities signed clearance," he repeated. "I was told inspection extended upward." The senior officer requested the badge and scanned it against his handheld terminal. The device emitted a low denial tone. Clearance limited to service quadrant only. No extension recorded. He exhaled through his nose, a restrained acknowledgement of internal failure. "You will remain silent," the officer instructed the contractor. To the guard, he said, "Household status." "Undisturbed," the guard replied. "Study session ongoing." The officer nodded once. "Good." There was a moment then, brief but weighty, where administrative calculus could have intervened again. The narrative might have been adjusted to categorize the breach as procedural miscommunication. The guard felt that possibility in the silence. Instead, the senior officer turned toward the loosened utility panel and the folded blanket. He crouched, examining the relay device the guard had removed. "This is not routine inspection equipment," he said quietly. It was the first acknowledgement that the situation exceeded clerical error. Additional personnel arrived, taking custody of the restrained man without spectacle. He did not resist as they guided him downward. His earlier confidence had diminished, replaced by guarded stillness. Once the stairwell cleared, the senior officer faced the guard directly. "You breached a sealed door without supervisory presence. It was not accusation, merely statement." "Yes, sir." "Justification." The guard met his gaze evenly. "Sustained motion, proximity to juvenile quarters, no valid access log." The officer held the look for several seconds, weighing discipline against outcome. Above them, faintly, a door opened and closed within the residential wing. Ordinary sound, life continuing undisturbed. Finally, the officer inclined his head once. "Seal will be documented as compromised under active threat review." It was not praise, it was institutional protection, for the household and perhaps for the guard. "Remain on post tonight. Report to command at first light." The guard acknowledged. He resecured the upper door, ensuring the bar was firmly in place this time, then descended to supervise the resealing of the lower entrance. Fresh wax was applied under direct observation. The crest impression settled into place cleanly, unmarred. As the corridor returned to its quiet configuration, the guard resumed position outside the juvenile wing. The lighting remained warm, the air steady. No one inside had witnessed the confrontation. That was the measure of success. Yet, beneath the restored stillness lay the knowledge that access had been granted from within the system itself. The breach had not been forced from outside stone walls. It had been authorized, carelessly or deliberately, by someone trusted.
Morning light entered the palace gradually, filtered through high windows and diffused across stone floors that had already been polished before dawn. The guard stood outside Command Office 3 at precisely 700 hours, uniform pressed, posture neutral. The events of the night had been contained without disturbance to the household. The young royal had completed evening study, retired on schedule, and departed for morning instruction without deviation. To an external observer, nothing had occurred. Inside the administrative wing, however, the atmosphere carried a restrained tightness. He was admitted without delay. Present in the room were the senior interior officer from the Stairwell, a legal advisor attached to the household office, and the deputy chamberlain responsible for facilities oversight. The contractor had been transferred to holding for formal questioning. The junior facilities administrator who had authorized the inspection sat at the far end of the table, pale but composed. A digital recorder rested between them, already active. "State your account," the deputy chamberlain said evenly. The guard began at the motion alert and proceeded chronologically. Seal fracture, log absence, relay device, expired badge, proximity to juvenile corridor. He described actions taken and justification for breaching the sealed stairwell without supervisory clearance. He did not speculate on motive. He did not refer to instinct. He cited proximity thresholds and sensor manipulation. When he finished, the room remained quiet for several seconds. The legal advisor adjusted her glasses and asked one question. At any point did the unauthorized individual gain visual access to the minor? "Negative," the guard replied. The answer mattered. The deputy chamberlain exhaled slightly, tension contained but not released. The junior administrator finally spoke, voice controlled but strained. He explained that the contractor had requested extended access to review wiring inconsistencies flagged during renovation. Paperwork had been incomplete, but pressure to expedite repairs before an upcoming state visit had influenced judgment. There was no intent to compromise residential security, he said. The guard observed him without visible reaction. Intent was separate from outcome. The senior interior officer placed the relay device on the table between them. "This was installed behind a restricted panel," he said quietly, "not required for electrical review." The administrator's composure faltered for the first time. He had not authorized that. That much appeared genuine. The deputy chamberlain turned to the guard. "Your written report will be filed within the hour," he said. "Language must reflect facts only. No inference beyond evidence." The instruction was routine, yet weighted. The palace managed information carefully. Words could expand or contain consequence. The guard inclined his head once. He understood the boundaries of phrasing and the power within them. He completed the report in the administrative annex overlooking the inner courtyard. The window stood slightly open, allowing cool air to move across the desk. From below came the distant cadence of ceremonial drills beginning for the day. He typed deliberately, each sentence measured. He documented the fractured seal, the absence of authorized logs, the sustained motion alerts, the relay device installation, the expired badge, and the unauthorized presence within 10 meters of the juvenile study wing entrance. He included the directive he had received to await supervisory arrival and the reason he had acted prior to it. He did not speculate on motive. He did not refer to instinct. He cited proximity thresholds and sensor manipulation. When he finished, the room remained quiet for several seconds. The legal advisor adjusted her glasses and asked one question. At any point did the unauthorized individual gain visual access to the minor? "Negative," the guard replied. The answer mattered. The deputy chamberlain exhaled slightly, tension contained but not released. The junior administrator finally spoke, voice controlled but strained. He explained that the contractor had requested extended access to review wiring inconsistencies flagged during renovation. Paperwork had been incomplete, but pressure to expedite repairs before an upcoming state visit had influenced judgment. There was no intent to compromise residential security, he said. The guard observed him without visible reaction. Intent was separate from outcome.
The senior interior officer placed the relay device on the table between them. "This was installed behind a restricted panel," he said quietly, "not required for electrical review." The administrator's composure faltered for the first time. He had not authorized that. That much appeared genuine. The deputy chamberlain turned to the guard. "Your written report will be filed within the hour," he said. "Language must reflect facts only. No inference beyond evidence." The instruction was routine, yet weighted. The palace managed information carefully. Words could expand or contain consequence. The guard inclined his head once. He understood the boundaries of phrasing and the power within them. He completed the report in the administrative annex overlooking the inner courtyard. The window stood slightly open, allowing cool air to move across the desk. From below came the distant cadence of ceremonial drills beginning for the day. He typed deliberately, each sentence measured. He documented the fractured seal, the absence of authorized logs, the sustained motion alerts, the relay device installation, the expired badge, and the unauthorized presence within 10 meters of the Juvenile study wing entrance. He included the directive he had received to await supervisory arrival and the reason he had acted prior to it. He did not include opinion. He did not soften proximity. When he finished, the room remained quiet for several seconds. The legal advisor adjusted her glasses and asked one question. At any point did the unauthorized individual gain visual access to the minor? "Negative," the guard replied. The answer mattered. The deputy chamberlain exhaled slightly, tension contained but not released. The junior administrator finally spoke, voice controlled but strained. He explained that the contractor had requested extended access to review wiring inconsistencies flagged during renovation. Paperwork had been incomplete, but pressure to expedite repairs before an upcoming state visit had influenced judgment. There was no intent to compromise residential security, he said. The guard observed him without visible reaction. Intent was separate from outcome. The senior interior officer placed the relay device on the table between them. "This was installed behind a restricted panel," he said quietly, "not required for electrical review." The administrator's composure faltered for the first time. He had not authorized that. That much appeared genuine. The deputy chamberlain turned to the guard. "Your written report will be filed within the hour," he said. "Language must reflect facts only. No inference beyond evidence." The instruction was routine, yet weighted. The palace managed information carefully. Words could expand or contain consequence. The guard inclined his head once. He understood the boundaries of phrasing and the power within them. He completed the report in the administrative annex overlooking the inner courtyard. The window stood slightly open, allowing cool air to move across the desk. From below came the distant cadence of ceremonial drills beginning for the day. He typed deliberately, each sentence measured. He documented the fractured seal, the absence of authorized logs, the sustained motion alerts, the relay device installation, the expired badge, and the unauthorized presence within 10 meters of the Juvenile study wing entrance. He included the directive he had received to await supervisory arrival and the reason he had acted prior to it. He did not speculate on motive. He did not refer to instinct. He cited proximity thresholds and sensor manipulation. When he finished, the room remained quiet for several seconds. The legal advisor adjusted her glasses and asked one question. At any point did the unauthorized individual gain visual access to the minor? "Negative," the guard replied. The answer mattered. The deputy chamberlain exhaled slightly, tension contained but not released. The junior administrator finally spoke,
voice controlled but strained. He explained that the contractor had requested extended access to review wiring inconsistencies flagged during renovation. Paperwork